Hello again. Welcome to another Outlier podcast. I've been asked to do this one specifically by a couple of people that I chat to quite regularly. Um, it's it's got a relevance to biblical end time prophecy, I believe, and it's about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. So, for those of you who don't know, Klaus Schwab is a German, 84 years old. He's economist and an engineer, and in 1971 he set up what was eventually to become the World Economic Forum, which he chairs and effectively controls. And if you don't know who the World Economic Forum is, you might more have heard of Davos, which is the international sort of meeting of top business leaders, entrepreneurs, tech giants, those type of people, billionaires, all that type of people. That happens in Switzerland every year, which is where he's based. So I just want to give you a little bit of background because I do think this is worth watching. I do think that there's some quite sinister undertones to what they're saying, and I do think we need to take notice. Now I've got a few notes, so I will be reading from a few notes because although I've been looking at this organisation for a long time, there's an awful lot of information to share, and I don't want to bore you with everything. But let's just say, when he set up the World Economic Forum, it was basically it was set up to shape global, regional, and industrial agendas. So basically, he wrote a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it's all talking about a fusing together of digital, physical, and biological worlds, and to challenging the meaning of what it means to be human. And what he's talking about there is a topic called transhumanism, which is a blend of human and technology, which is something that if you've been studying anything like you'll see is around. It's all to do with artificial intelligence and the ability to create superhumans, really, which are part human and part machine. Now, obviously, this has an awful lot of ethical implications, but it really is the driving force behind uh, what he believes is the way forward for the world. Now, you may say, well, that's all a bit fancy, but actually, if you look at the way technology is moving, the speed it's moving at, this stuff is out there. This stuff is starting to be trialed now. There are um, so many things now which are automated, and so many experimental stuff around artificial intelligence and this transhumanism. I really urge you to kind of get out there and do some of your own research because it's pretty scary stuff. And if you imagine how hacking works now, imagine if you could hack into the superhumans or maybe even the super soldiers or whatever else they become. It's quite a scary prospect. But anyway, that's kind of digressing. Um, what he purports the World Economic Forum to be about is really um, inclusivism is the one thing. Now, I find that kind of strange because to be a member of the World Economic Forum, you have to pay a fee of $30,000 a year. And to attend the Davos meeting, each ticket is $60,000. So, inclusive for who? You have to really ask, because it's not inclusive for the most of us. And there's a general sense that these are a group of elitists, and I won't say elite because I don't believe they are elite. They're elitists. They think they're elite. They think they're better than us. They think they have the right to control what we do, how we do it, the things we can do, the things we can't do. One of the great slogans, and it's very big on slogans, the World Economic Forum. One of the great slogans is you'll own nothing, but you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. And just to give you an idea of how swiftly they want to move to this, they're talking about what they call the Great Reset, which you may well have heard about, by 2030, 8 years away. That's when they're planning to do it. And people will say, well, how can they do that? How can they possibly do that? Well, Let's just look what's happened with the pandemic. Where before have we ever seen a whole planet locked down when most of the people were healthy? Think about it. Think about the rise and increase of technology. Think about the powers and controls that have been given to governments and taken away from us. I'm not trying to make this into a conspiracy theory thing, but I think it's well worth considering where is all this going and the pace it's going at. I mean, the pandemic responses were also included in conjunction with the World Health Organization as a way to show the world that we need a more globalized system of government and control. And this is very much being pushed by the World Economic Forum. And if you think that's just a pipe dream, well, only 2 weeks ago, the World Health Organization is proposing a treaty that they want all the countries of the world to sign up to say that all pandemic response globally will be mandated by the World Health Organization, whose main stakeholder is Bill Gates. Now, what he knows about pandemics and medicine, I don't know, because as far as I was aware, he developed computers. But he's got money, so money talks. Certainly talks at Davos, certainly talks at the World Economic Forum. So what we're facing now is a real hard push towards a globalist government system. And this global government system won't be a democratic system in the way that we know it. There won't be people voted in. He talks about, and the World Economic Forum website is where you can go and look at all this. It's there in public domain, easy for anybody to see, that the world will be run by, and get this, self-appointed stakeholders. And guess where they're going to come from? Big business CEOs, billionaires, political elites are going to get together and going to form a world government where they override all national interests, any national governments. And if you think that's not possible, let me give you a few names of people that are involved with what the WEF call its Young Leaders Program. Let's read a couple. You might know them. Angela Merkel, Justin Trudeau, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Emmanuel Macron, Vladimir Putin. That's a shock, isn't it? And guess who's one of the big supporters of this? George Soros. George Soros, the Eastern European billionaire. And if you listen to anything that George Soros has spoken about over the years, I would go as far as to say millionaire psychopath, George Soros, who is purported to fund Antifa, believes in anarchy, believes in destabilizing all the world's governments to gain control. So these are the people we're talking about. Scwab himself said recently he's infiltrated the cabinets of all Western governments. He has his people in the cabinets of all of the Western governments. When he visited Canada, he joked when he met Trudeau's cabinet that he knew most of the people there. That's how far this has gone. And this has all been flying under the radar since 1971. Now, on the face of it, what he talks about is a form of Marxism. Oh, he wants equality. He wants everybody in the world to have a better life, which sounds great. But how's that going to happen? Well, obviously a redistribution of wealth. But that isn't going to happen voluntarily. People are not going to voluntarily give their wealth away to make the world a better place. So they're going to use, well, this is what I believe anyway, and a lot of political commentators believe the same as me. They're pushing for a global economic crash. Now, if that sounds a bit dramatic, look around you, what's happening. Look around you at the craziness of the main world economies right now. We are a hair's breadth from a global crash like we've never seen before. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why would they want to crash the world's economy? Well, if you wanted to set up a new global system, you have to first get rid of the old system. And people are not voluntarily going to give up the old system because so many of us are invested in it. And that's a warning to you as well. If you're invested into this system, think very long and hard whether that's going to last. Because the plan is to introduce a single global world currency, a cryptocurrency, which they will control, being controlled by a centralized bank, and it will be based on a social credit system which has already been introduced in China. Now, what a social credit system means is, depending on how you are perceived as being a good citizen, you will be told how much you can spend, what you can spend it on, and where you can go. And if you don't believe me, just look what happened to the truckers in Canada recently when they protested against Trudeau. He froze not only their bank accounts, he froze the bank accounts of their supporters, and he froze the Just Giving page and stole the money from Just Giving, the people who contributed for the truckers, and diverted it to another source. Thankfully, that was challenged legally, and that money has gone back to the people. But that's the level of power and control these people already have. Then we're likely to see another pandemic. I don't think they're finished with this pandemic business yet. It's too useful a tool for them. We're going to see another pandemic. We're going to see the WHO take control of the pandemic response. We're then going to see a push towards them saying the only way we can tackle these crises is to have a globalized system of government, which will include a reshaped United Nations. It will include the stakeholders, the business people that I've talked about, the billionaires, the tech giants, all those that have been complicit in not only lining their own pockets through these crises. And just as an offside, the average billionaire increased his wealth by over 30% during the pandemic, whilst the rest of us suffered. Just take that on board. Now, Klaus Schwab talks a good game. He talks about, oh, well, we've got to get away from these executives with high incomes, and he made big speeches about it and all that, until somebody checked on him. He earns from a non-profit organization, which is what the World Economic Forum, his salary is a million Swiss francs a year. Just his salary alone. He doesn't pay tax because it's not a taxable organization. He's also been challenged because he's used some of the money from the World Economic Forum's coffers to set up two private companies, which he is on the board of, who now contract back to the World Economic Forum, and they are profit-making companies. And he's making even more millions for them. To give you an idea of the scale of Davos, recently in May was the meeting. There were over 1,500 private jets parked at the airport near Davos, all going to the World Economic Forum, their global meeting. 1,500 private jets. And yet what do they spout? Environmentalism. We need to tackle the green agenda. We need to do this. Well, no, not they need to do it. We need to do it. So they're already crippling us with green taxes. They're already forcing us to give up our cars. They're already pricing us out of our ability to travel or our ability to even function properly. So it's not going to be a big leap for them to come along and say, do you know what? Let's take all this away from you. Let's take all this stress away from you. We'll take on all the burden of the stuff. We'll take on all your debt. We'll take on all everything else. And you can rent it back off us. at a fair rent, and everybody would get what they call a universal basic income, and this is worldwide. They would get a universal basic income, which is whatever they decide that universal basic income is. But you won't have any debt, but you won't actually own anything. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody's controlling the roof over my head, whether I can spend my money, whether I've got any money, what I can say, what I can do, otherwise I'll be penalised financially, that's pretty complete control to me. That sounds like a pretty controlling situation. It's interesting because, as an aside, Boris Johnson this week came up with this pie in the sky policy, which failed before, to get people on benefits to be able to buy their social housing. Now that sounds great because we've been led to believe that owning your own home is the epitome of everything. Well, that's fine if you can afford it. That's fine if you can afford to maintain it. That's fine when interest rates go up, you can cope with that increase. When they tell you you've got to have this new boiler because of green things, you've got to have this new insulation with all these things that they're bringing in under the guise of green, to price people out. Now you imagine people on benefits generally are on benefits because they haven't got the income to support home ownership. But what they have got right now is security, particularly if they're in social housing, which is what we're talking about. People in social housing have a security, and it's there for that reason. It's there to make sure that those who can't afford it have a secure home. Once they buy it, all that security is gone. Interest rates rise, maintenance bills become your responsibility. This is not the utopia that people think it is. The more you owe, the more control they have over you. Now, I would suggest to anybody, particularly to Christians, if you owe any money, do your very best to make sure that you pay that off. Because that gives you an awful lot of freedom that you won't have when the banks or the car finance companies and all those people suddenly raise their rates. You'll be beholden to them and you'll have to do as you're told, or else they're going to take it all off you. Think about it. Be wise. Be sensible. Anyway, I digress. What's already happening in America, and you can research this yourself if you like, because this issue of no private ownership seems like so far away from what we currently have that it seems almost impossible. Well, I urge you to look up a company in America called BlackRock. BlackRock is a private investment company, a private equity company. And what they've been doing is going round to whole neighborhoods, and I'm not talking about poor neighborhoods, I'm talking about middle-class neighborhoods. And they've been offering over the market price to buy people's properties and to rent them back to them. And now a lot of middle-class areas in the States are no longer areas of home ownership, they're rental areas. And the ownership is held by BlackRock. Now, goodness only knows who BlackRock are. I wouldn't, I'd hazard a guess that they're involved with the Davos lot. And this is happening more and more. If you think you're safe and secure because you own your home, be careful. There's many ways and means that they can make that unaffordable for you. Just think about it. Anyway, again, I urge you, do your own research. Don't just listen to what I say. This is not some conspiracy theory. This is all stuff that's written down. It's all stuff that's in public view. It's very easy to see where all this is headed. So the question is, where does this relate to biblical prophecy? Again, I'm not going to go into depth. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I do read and I do listen. And And the one thing I know is that at the end of the end times, there will come somebody called the Antichrist. Very clear in the Bible. And the Antichrist is, as I've mentioned in another one, it's an alternative Christ. Not an enemy of Christ, but an alternative Christ. And what he will do, he will come as a global leader. Think about that. How could he come as a global leader right now? We haven't got a global government, but we will have soon. He'll come as a global leader. He will bring a time of peace and prosperity, probably greater than the world's seen, for a very short period of time. Alongside that, there will be a new world religion, because the biggest threat to this plan is Christianity. And the reason Christianity is such a threat is because God has told us already that all this stuff is going to happen. You know, all included in this is things like what the Bible calls the mark of the beast, which is probably some kind of nanochip technology, which is already being trialed all over the world in different places, where they place a chip under your skin. And that chip is an active chip. It's not a benign chip. It's an active chip. So it requires a certain amount of battery power in. And you ask yourself, well, how can that happen? Well, I've done a little bit of research on this, and evidently there are two places in the body where the temperature changes are great enough to charge a tiny, tiny lithium battery. And that is in the wrist or on the forehead. The very places that the Bible talks about where the mark will be. It says those who don't receive the mark won't be able to buy or sell. Interesting that, because it's all linked with this global cryptocurrency. Also, there'll be this new hybrid religion, which it looks like it. It looks like God. It sounds like God, but it denies the power of the Holy Spirit, which makes it God. It'll probably be some kind of hybrid of environmentalism, Buddhism, probably Catholicism or elements of Catholicism. Who knows what else? But it will be completely opposed to Christianity. And Christianity is going to become a huge, huge threat. That's why we're being silenced now. That's why to speak out as a Christian is the only non-acceptable thing from any religion. You can speak out as a Muslim, you can protest, you can go outside cinemas and denounce films and get them to take them off. Not as a Christian. They're trying to make preaching the Bible hate speech because we don't go along with their woke agenda. And this is where our persecution started to come from. And we have to be ready for this. You know, it was promised. It's been promised to us. But this period of the rule of the Antichrist biblically is a 7-year period. And for the first 3.5 years, there will be peace, global peace. They'll even make a peace treaty with the Jews. So there'll be peace in the Middle East. And there is stuff to come before that, but I'll talk about that at another time. And in the middle of this reign, 3.5 years in, he will suddenly change. And you will see Satan in human form. And he will set himself up in the newly rebuilt temple in Jerusalem and declare that he is God. Believe me, these guys are not far off that now. In their own minds, they believe they're gods. They believe they have special powers. They believe they have special knowledge. They believe that they can tell us what to do, tell us how to live, because they're the only ones that know. Setting the stage, isn't it? Setting the stage for his reign. There's another thing that comes, and this is a good thing. Before the start of the tribulation, the church, the Christians, as we know it now, will be taken away from the earth. We will not have to experience this period of tribulation. And the Bible calls the tribulation the most terrifying, awful time the world has ever seen. Ever seen. There will be global disasters. There may be nuclear wars. There will be meteorite strikes. There will huge swathes of the population will be killed by disease and famine, and there'll be no help at all. But thankfully, those of us that believe, those of us that are here and believe now, we won't be part of that. And if anything should urge you to reach out to your loved ones, to your neighbours, to your workmates, and all that, is to save them from this tribulation. And people say, well, that's just escapism. Yeah, right. Yeah, that is good. Wouldn't you want to escape the tribulation? There's something wrong with you if you want to go through the tribulation. I certainly don't. I want to be with Jesus in heaven. And at the end of the tribulation, and this is the good news, at the end of the tribulation, God's going to say enough. And he's going to send Jesus. And Jesus is going to come back. And the whole world is going to see him. And he's going to strike the Antichrist, and the false prophet will be the religious leader. And he's going to destroy these systems, and he's going to set up his own reign, and we will reign with him. That's the promise. But this stuff is relevant. This stuff that's happening right now is relevant. Relevant not because we should be scared. Rather, we should be excited, because this is speeding the return of Jesus. Jesus himself said, when you see these things starting to happen, well, he calls them the birth pangs, and they like contractions for a woman. They come closer and closer, and we can see there's an acceleration in evil these days, which was promised in the Bible. We are coming to the time where Jesus returns, firstly for his church, and secondly to destroy the evil and to reign on the earth. It's coming. We should be looking up and rejoicing, because our Saviour is near. But also, we should be flat out for the gospel, flat out to pull people from this awful time that's coming on the earth, flat out to pull people from the flames of hell, which God never wanted anybody to go to. But if they reject him, he's got no choice. So there's good news. But we need to look at prophecy. We need to not be scared of the end times, because they're the best times for us. These are the times that are most ripe for us to be evangelizing the world. People are scared. People are without hope. People don't know where this is all going. God's told us. We as people know. And am I saying Klaus Scwab is the Antichrist? Pretty unlikely. He's 84. So I'd say it was unlikely, but is it likely that the Antichrist could come within this federation of people, this World Economic Forum? Quite possibly. Can't say for sure, but it's quite possible. The one thing that is for sure, it's moving apace towards global government and global control. And all of that is promised. And all of that has to happen. The Antichrist has to come. The tribulation has to happen before Jesus returns. So let us stop being scared of talking to people about this. We as Christians more than anybody know what's happening. There's never been a wrong prophecy in the Bible, and there never will be. We can ignore it, or we can use it as a tool to say to people, look what's happening, but there is an answer, and there is a hope, and there is a way forward, and that way forward is to accept Jesus. And if you accept Jesus, you're fine. You're going to be with him. He's got your back. Let's not shy away from this stuff. I think, I've heard so much fluffiness, so many fluffy sermons, and they're great and they're wonderful and they're all this, but actually this is the real stuff that's happening in people's lives right now. These fuel price rises, cost of living increases, it's all part of the plan. It's all part of this making the world unsustainable for most of us, so that we will grasp whatever solution is put before us. We as Christians got to know better. We can't take that mark. God said clearly, we can't take that chip. It's not the vaccine. People have said it was a vaccine. It's not the vaccine. But at some stage there will come a chip, and that chip will say, I worship the Antichrist. And God won't take that. let's really kind of dig into it. I mean, I'm probably haven't put it anywhere near as well as other people can, but do you know what? It matters. It matters to me. I look at these things. I judge world events by what I read in prophecy, and I'm no academic, but I can read and I can see, and I have got the illumination of the Holy Spirit to help me to understand these things. This is not a new quest for me. I've been looking at these things for 20 odd years, and some people say, "Oh, it's all a conspiracy theory." Well, maybe it's just a spoiler alert. Conspiracy theory is a great way of discrediting things, isn't it? But if you can see it in the Bible, it's not a conspiracy theory, is it? It's a spoiler alert. So let's rise up and be the church. Let's rise up and warn the people around us. Let's educate ourselves to see what's happening. Let's not shy away from the news. Let's look at the news, but through the light of Scripture, and particularly the Scriptures relating to the prophetic and the end times. Because this stuff's happening, guys. It's happening right now. And we've got the answer. And we need to share the answer. So please, 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 I beg of you, do your own research. Do your own looking. Forgive me where I may be wrong, or I may got it slightly wrong. But I think the bulk of it is I'm quite convinced prayerfully before God that what I'm saying to you has a pretty big grain of truth in it. And I'm still watching, so I'll keep you updated. All right, guys, don't give up. Jesus is coming. Thank you.